Workshop from November 15th to order, and I believe Dr. Pace.
Okay. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. This is the facilities update. We have 6 items that we'll be covering this evening. We'll be starting with the new high school update by Schenkel Schultz and Gilbane, followed by the Point Siena update, the middle school prototype that we currently have out on the street, and our planning director will provide an update on the Celebration Island Village, and we will also talk about the middle school AA Harmony, and then we'll wrap up with an update of the sales tax, our plans going forward. With that, I'd like to invite David Torbert, Patrick Roush with Schenkel Schultz, and Eric Dodson with Gilbane Construction.
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon. Yes. And the first update is in your red folders.
By the way, on behalf of the board, I'd like to thank you for your help with the half-day sales tax.
Absolutely.
It's the right thing to do. I'm glad you guys got it passed, because we
are
all have a lot of
We are
needs.
too.
We've got a little help from our friends.
Yeah, but we do appreciate your help.
Well, so as Mark said, we're here to update you on the high school. In all candor, a lot of the information in the handout is very, very similar to what you saw the last time we were here to update you. Just real quickly in the agenda, we're going to go over the schedule, the status of the Army Corps permit, where we're at with the last bid package, and then Gilbane's going to talk a little bit about where they're at with the construction process, and then also where they're at on the pricing. And then I believe staff is going to give an update on the FF&E, where that stands. So without further ado, of course, as we've always started everyone, we start with the objectives and goals. I won't go over those because we've gone over them many times with you all. In terms of schedule, the next slide you see, I'm missing one in there.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
So what's changed since last time we met, other than we're further down the road?
We're further down the road. We got the GMP approved for the building shell package. The Army Corps has been out to the site to make the wetland determination. They have not made the actual determination, but they have visited the site and done their field work. So we're awaiting their decision on where that wetland line is. Really, those are the major things that have changed since the last.
I think of that and the construction progress.
And the construction progress, of course.
Okay, so we're on schedule, we're under budget, and you guys are gonna, okay, and so Army Corps of Engineers is the only wild card right now.
Right.
And then the roof on the
Right.
civic center.
That boils it down for me, I can't speak for
The
the
roof on the
So with respect to the schedule slide that's in the handout, we're here at the November 15th workshop. The GMP for the second building shell package was approved on November 1st, and we are in essence a week away from having the interior fit-out package completed in design.
Any more vandalism or problems since?
No, we haven't had any more. And Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that was about it.
Good.
We did put a security system out on site, and since then, now we have our construction perimeter fencing up.
You've kept Michelle off of all the heavy equipment.
We have. We have.
We saw
It's
what
been
you
a
did last
daunting
time.
task.
Okay, good. That's good, thank you.
Going to the next slide about the permitting. In the handout, you'll see that the Army Corps permit is highlighted. As I said just a minute ago, they have been to the site to start the process of making the determination, but they have not issued any final determination yet, so we kind of are in a wait-and-see mode with those folks right now. Otherwise, all the permitting is moving forward as it should on schedule, and no concerns with respect to that.
And real quick, what we're voting on tonight takes care of a portion of that, correct, with the mitigation?
That's for the mitigation fees to go to the TM mitigation bank.
Right.
So
Which
yes, that is
portion of-
related to this.
The next slide is just a blow-up of the interior fit-out package schedule. Again, really the thing that's changed is we're that much closer to the finish line. Next week, we will issue the 100% construction documents for that last and final bid package, and that will put the drawings into Gilbane's hand to start the bidding process on that last portion of the overall project. So that's kind of the extent of the design update. I'm going to turn it over to Eric, and he can update you with respect to the construction progress.
Yeah, I'll just go ahead and give you an update on, we'll start out with the permitting. So far, we have received the site permit. We're on site, we've mobilized, obviously. The next site, or the next permit that we need to get is the shell package permit, which we're anticipating receiving that this week. So that'll give us the ability to do inspections on foundations and whatnot. So that's all moving forward and on schedule. Current activities, if you've been by the site over the last couple of days, you'll see that the perimeter fence now is all in place, and that has cut back on the vandalism for sure. That's being locked up at night. We've started dewatering, and we're digging the ponds right now. We're digging those ponds, and the fill is being used from the ponds over to the building pads. So we're currently bringing the building pads up, and actually we should be done with those building pads, with the exceptions of the classroom buildings, the 3-story classroom buildings. Really by the end of this week, it'd be the building pads. We've got some stone column foundations that'll be going in, and that's for the 3-story classroom buildings, and we'll be starting those probably by the end of the month, along with foundations for the buildings as well. So everything is on schedule currently, and we're doing well.
When do you anticipate a topping?
I would say towards the end of next summer.
By December, that sounds great. No, okay, so April?
I heard December.
By the end of next summer.
April sounds good.
As far as the GMPs, as Dave mentioned, the last GMP, which was the shell package, was approved on November 1st. The interior fit-out package, we plan on submitting to facilities on January 30th, which should get that in your hands for approval on March 7th. And that'll keep us on schedule at that point. As far as the construction costs go, there's really no change there. So far, we're tracking on budget, slightly ahead of it, slightly below budget. So we don't really foresee any surprises outside of the market, and actually the market's been pretty good lately. I think we'll get good participation on the bidders. I was telling Mark, we've actually set up an outreach event again with the foundation. We'll be doing that the first week of, last week of November, first week of December. Yeah,
Nice.
that's where we are.
It goes without saying, but, and I know every board feels this way, but I think you've heard consistency from this board. So we want to make sure we're really leveraging every dollar and finding cost savings where we can. We pride ourselves on being able to build things better and cheaper than other people. So just to keep that conversation at the forefront of what we're doing, I want to make sure that I express that to you, I think on behalf of all of us, that we appreciate what you're doing, but continue to work to try to find efficiencies and cost savings for us along the way.
Dr. Pace, when do you anticipate having a planning principal in place for the school?
I anticipate asking to advertise for that position in February and potentially bringing a recommendation to you in April so that we could leverage those last 6 to 8 weeks of school to gather community input on things like school colors and mascot and names and those types of things. Typically, you don't bring somebody on board until July 1.
Got it, thank you.
But I think the sooner the better,
Yep.
because we want to do some creative things with the FF&E and all those other things.
And it gives you a chance to really get some.
It does. It's a better time to be on the market early on.
Singing of the choir.
Good.
And a quick FF&E update, we have our kickoff meeting this Friday to start the process for selecting the FF&E package, determining what percentage will be the 21st century learning and where we will have other pieces and parts. So November, it's good that we're already having this conversation. With the 21st century learning furniture, there could be some pretty long lead times, so starting the process this early should allow us to plan accordingly. And as we work through that process, then we'll develop a delivery schedule so that those dates will be published in the purchase orders. So the vendors will have a specific date or a range of dates, a small window where they have to deliver the product so that we can pre-mobilize our movers and be ready for those deliveries.
I got a question on that. So, Dr. Pace, Dr. Fritz, I think Dr. H, y'all been high school principals, okay? So, you're talking about doing an FF&E package now, and I think that's great to get out in front of it, but let's go into the premise that you're the principal of that school. That you're going to be selected in February, March, April, May, tell me why it doesn't make sense for a principal to be part of that decision-making process with FF&E.
There will still have some time for them to have some input into that piece, but if we don't start planning now, we really risk the.
Okay, and I'm not discouraging,
And also some efficiencies and effectiveness.
I'm
So,
just trying,
but yeah.
if I'm the principal, I'm thinking, I want to see everything and pick everything, and, okay.
But remember, we're working towards using a district standard for things like FF&E. So while the principal will have some say, that principal probably won't be the principal forever. And we're building a building to serve students for the long term for our community.
Okay, that's right. I'll say this.
The other thing we gotta keep in mind is, you're talking about ordering a lot of different furniture, and we're not the only one who will order that same furniture. And if we don't get the lead time out there, we won't get it in on time. So that's one of the main concerns with front-loading it way out in front of it.
It's funny, based on what Dr. Pace said, I understand the principal who's going to be the first principal will be the principal forever. But I remember when we opened Liberty with Gary Pricer and a celebration with John Bushy, those guys weren't really on board with the fact they weren't going to be there forever. I mean, they took complete ownership, they were all in, and that was their baby. So, but you're
I
right.
can tell you we were ordering furniture before they started because they didn't start until July.
And I know neither of them complained.
As far as participation, you still getting pretty broad response from people wanting to participate in the project?
Yeah, it's actually been really good. We've been making a lot of calls, just, kind of getting the interest out there. We're actually advertised a week early as well. First advertisement will hit this Sunday, just to keep stimulating. But so far, it's been a good response.
And then the board had a conversation a while ago regarding safety and security of campuses and making sure we built certain components into all of our new schools. Have you taken I don't know if you know the context of that or not, but if you do, what we had talked about there with our sheriff and our PD, and making sure we incorporate some of those things into this campus?
And Randy's been a part of some of these discussions as well.
Okay. That was a very key piece
Yes.
for all of us. I just want to
Yeah,
make sure.
I don't know all the details of that, but I do know that we've put some of those things into place.
Communications.
Yeah. Repeaters.
Yeah, repeater.
We're actually looking at an alternative product, but
Okay.
I'm trying to set up a meeting with Sheriff-elect Gibson to talk about his desires for that.
Good.
Okay, good. If that board, if nothing else, we'll let these guys go and move on. I think we got several
Thank
things.
you,
we
guys.
got to-
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
It's
you.
good.
And
Thank you.
congratulations again on
Thank you.
sales tax.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Couldn't do without your help.
Sorry. I didn't mean to do that.
So we'll continue the update with the Point Siena High School. So the architect is Song and Associates. Plans are scheduled to be completed the end of this month, so we're on track with the design. The South Florida Water Management Permit was approved this month. In fact, it was issued on October 24th, so we're feeling really good about the Water Management District permit for that project. The plans are 100% complete, and they're in permitting now. The construction manager selected is Wharton Smith, and they have started some activities to start looking at the project in preparation for the bidding. The GMP is scheduled to go to the school board on January 17th, and the construction start January for completion this summer. And we also have an FF&E meeting scheduled this week for Point Siena as well.
Mr. Meacham participating in that?
Yes.
He's confirmed yesterday that he's going to do that.
Good, thank you.
So the move-in date would be July of the summer, in time for the start of school, return of teachers on the 3rd. The budget and scope of the construction, where estimated construction budget, $6.125 million. This is a 2-story addition, 475 student stations, and it will include some work to existing labs in the schools, in the existing school, the culinary arts, construction, and medical.
So that 6.125 includes those alternates, correct?
Yes,
We kind of
it
added
does.
to that budget that we discussed at the last workshop for those CTE spaces.
So with the construction lab, we'll be adding another 25 student stations, so a total of 500 student stations with this project. A study is currently underway to look at the feasibility of thermal energy storage. That's being completed by the MEP for the project, the same, one and the same for our project, OCI Associates. So they are currently crunching numbers to determine if it would be feasible to spend additional dollars on thermal energy storage, in that we would have the increased efficiencies. And the other big part of this is what would we be able to receive for the Duke Energy rebate. So for example, if the additional cost is $1 million, but we can get a $600,000 rebate from Duke Energy, and we can show the remaining delta, that $400,000 return on investment in 5 years or less, then we may have something. So we are working on that feasibility study, and we should have something to report for the next update. In fact, I'll probably provide an interim update to the board, given that we don't have a workshop in December. This is the west-southwest elevation. You can see the elevated walkway that will tie into the existing campus, and our new building also receives an elevator. So that will help us with accessibility all the way around. With that, are there any questions on the Point Siena Classroom Wing Addition project?
No, we did decide to do the flat roof. There was savings there and the potential energy efficiency components as well, right?
Yes, as well as a small rebate that we'll get from Duke Energy, about $2,400.
Every dollar counts. We take it.
That's right.
One more portable or creative furniture.
I like that term, creative furniture.
That's a good one. The next item that we would like to update you on is the middle school prototype that's currently out on the street, request for information. And this is in keeping with our strategic plan, specifically fiscal responsibility, to utilize, optimize the use of all resources to preserve and protect the taxpayers' investments. So we are looking to expand the pool of prototypes for a couple of reasons: for the competitiveness, for the fiscal responsibility side, but also to have a greater inventory of potential prototypes. So if one prototype works fine for that ideal site, then it may not work for that bowling alley, that long, narrow site. So this will give us more options as we go forward and master plan our sites.
Can you remind me when we discussed this?
This was part of the Strand?
It's one of the strategies.
It's inside the.
Yes, it is.
But to your point, we haven't discussed it.
We have not discussed this
Specifically.
specifically at a workshop yet.
No, this is the first time that we're bringing this forward. And so the schedule for this is we advertised on October 17th. Submittals are due this week on the 17th. Shortlist meeting is scheduled for the end of this month. The site visits will take place the week of December 5th. So as we identify the prototypes and possible solutions, we'll go out and canvass those prototypes to see what might be a good fit for our school district. And then finally, the rankings on December 13th, so that we can take a board approval forward on the 17th of January. The next RFI that is anticipated is for the new elementary school prototypes, and that will include both the urban and suburban prototypes, so we'll have a good mixture there as well.
And this is the urban we're going here under, right?
For the middle school, we will have suburban and urban
Okay.
prototypes submitted. So
What did you
each
consider
of
the
the
one that we
design
have
profi-
already?
I would say
The current.
that the current is more of a suburban, though
Okay.
our design professional has been able to do creative things with the kit of parts. Case in point, on middle school AA, that was the Point Siena, where they took their prototype and were able to create a more slender approach to fit that more rectangular site.
So the
What school are we talking about?
Middle school AA, which was the Point
Harmony.
Siena.
No? I thought we discussed middle school AA was Harmony.
Thought so too.
I'm sorry, DD.
DD.
Middle school DD.
Okay, sorry.
So
My-
that's
my-
the one that was designed at one time for that Pleasant Hill site to be
Okay.
adjacent to Pleasant
Yep.
Hill Elementary
Yep.
School along the railroad track piece
That was
there.
when the former board
Yeah.
blew it up.
So when we look at the site where we probably have more room, say Harmony, we wouldn't be looking at a new urban prototype. We'd
That's something
probably-
we're actually going to discuss here in a few minutes in
Okay.
terms of what direction the board wants to go.
And so with this, to go back to what Mr. Booth is asking, I think, with the middle school process you're going through right now, you're looking for 2 different types of middle school prototypes for us to have in queue.
We're looking for multiple prototypes with various design professionals, and they will likely submit an urban and a suburban prototype. So, for example, if we shortlist 4 design firms, we could end up with a total catalog inventory of, say, 8 prototypes.
So what necessarily is wrong with our current, is there
That was what I was
something
gonna ask.
wrong with our current prototype, or?
No,
No, we just want to update and upgrade, or?
No, I think that the current prototype is great. It works fine. I've built it on several occasions. I'm just following my marching
No, it's
orders
fine.
to follow
Yeah,
our
no,
strategic
it's fine.
plan.
The idea
Absolutely.
was that we would have some options,
Yep.
some choice.
I'm good.
No, but I had the same question. What deviation are we looking for? What new variation of it? So I'm interested to see what comes of it. And what school do we have now that's been built with that prototype, the middle school?
The last
existing?
middle school, it started as a middle school. It morphed into a K-8 as West Side.
Oh, okay.
That's where the prototype was used last.
Okay.
And my only issue with.
That's your design?
My only issue with going for a prototype, I mean, there's nothing wrong with looking to see what options there are, as long as doing that doesn't slow down anything else. Because I know it takes time and energy and payroll, and there's only so many people and so many hours in the day.
Right.
And again, I'm not telling anyone what to do or what not to do, but as long as it's not an impediment to getting stuff done, do what you gotta do.
Right. And we'll talk a little bit further about that very point when we talk about Harmony.
Okay.
So,
One last question. You may have said this. Are you getting a good response on submittals?
we haven't received them yet. They're due in on the 17th,
I've
this
seen
week.
it. Okay. So no one submitted anything yet. Okay.
No.
What is today?
15.
15.
Okay.
2 days.
So the criteria for a prototype is it must have been successfully built in the state of Florida. And our criteria for middle school is 1,408 student stations. And again, we're looking at a prototype that can be constructed on various sized sites, both urban and suburban. We will be recommending several middle schools for approval so that, again, we can have a good selection based on how we go forward with our purchasing of sites and what's available for real estate.
So with the 1408 student station, what are some examples of middle schools now that would, like, what does West Side have? I know Rhonda's in the back, maybe she knows.
West Side's over that, aren't they?
Can you help me, Rhonda?
Right.
Oh, sorry, Mike. I didn't-
Isn't Neptune getting close to
Yeah.
Neptune Middle
1,500?
School is about 1450 right now.
We have a 6th grade center, which is essentially relocatable, correct, at that school, so.
Mike,
Remember,
you
it's
would-
also single-story, and our
Correct.
more prototypes
Correct.
are typically
Two.
multi-story.
You would know better than anyone. Horizon, what is that built for?
Right at 1,100 right now, students, it's
Including
about 200 capacity with some portables in there right now. Tim, when you were SAC chair there, we were beyond 1,600.
Right, I
beds.
remember. That's part of why I'm asking, is I'm trying to put perspective. What are just some other examples of true middle schools we have right now, size-wise? Just give me a couple so I can.
Right, so Narcoossee Middle is about 1,100 as well, as is Kissimmee Middle School, right at around 1,100.
Discovery is a little smaller, right?
Yeah, just right at 1,000 Discovery is right now.
That's what they're built for, student station-wise, or that's what their enrollment is?
That's what their enrollment is, and Rhonda may be able to help me out with the student stations. Student stations,
So I guess if we were to move forward, say, on this AA middle school in the Harmony area, we would feel confident with moving ahead with the current prototype that we have.
Yes. In fact, we've paid for the design, so we have
That's
something
what I
that's
was-
well down the
yeah.
road. And we likely, should be
So
able
we've
to
got to talk
negotiate a
about-
pretty
Okay.
good prototype reuse fee.
for time use and stuff too.
Yep.
So I apologize. I know I'm asking you guys questions. You may not have answers to yet, but I want to just wrap my head around the numbers and the size of what we're working with and what we've been building. I just don't know the answer.
Our current board approved middle school prototype, which has not been built for a while, is 1,295. If you recall, this in the summer, as part of the facilities list
Yep.
project, we increased the
We
middle
upped all
school
those
to
numbers.
1,408 with the middle school curriculum team, and to increase it, we added some BSC because we have a high BSC population, 2 or 3 science classrooms, and some skills labs. So the new prototype would be slightly larger than the one we built years ago, which was like your Horizon, Kissimmee Middle, et cetera, based on the input of the new middle school curriculum team.
Good. That's exactly what I wanted to hear.
Thanks.
Okay, and I guess the only concern, if at all, and I know that there's always that balance between maximizing the real estate that we have and the space we can build while making sure that from an operational standpoint, the school can function the way the school should function. And I guess I just want to make sure that we're mindful of the economy of scale that we can create on these sites while not getting our schools, in this case a middle school, too big to where it becomes a nightmare from an administration standpoint, but yet that we're not, building campus. Much the same approach we took with this new high school. As we said, we can stay with what we've always done, or we can increase and we can realize that, time has come, we just have to build bigger schools. So obviously that's why I'm asking those questions. I just don't want myself or another board member to be sitting here in 10 years and going, why didn't they build it at 1,600 instead of 14? Or why didn't they build it at 12 instead of 4? I mean, whatever the
Because
conversation.
Right Side didn't want it.
Yeah.
Real quick, to clarify that, at the existing middle schools, we've gone through and done several space reconfigurations, so we wouldn't have to have portables. So the current student stations at Horizon is 1,602, and Kissimmee Middle is 1,656. Narcousie Middle is 1,587, Discovery's 1,373. They're kind of out of whack from having them.
And we're doing
But-
space reconfigurations there.
Ron, I'm sorry, are you giving us what they're built for, or how many students they have?
No, that's what
Correct.
they're designed to hold.
Okay.
What they can hold with relocatables on site.
Right.
And then normally we take 10% off of that for the space utilization required by the state, so you take about 160 out of each of those, which would give you about a 1450 true population.
Right. And again, I'm not saying I have a problem with the number, I just want to understand the number, and I think one of the things that, I know where I sit, and I think where the board sits, that's probably where all of us do, is we don't want to build something and then have to deal with relocatables down the road. So I'd rather have the conversation now and understand what we're talking about than, in 6 years from now, us go, well, now it's time to start, moving portables into the community again, so.
Well, in fairness, Tim, I mean, you bring up a good point, but you talk to school board members throughout the state, outside of the Hillsboroughs, the DeVals, the Orange, the Dades, and a lot of them, I mean, their high schools still are less than 2,000 student stations. I mean, they're, 1,300 to 1,700 student stations, but they're in a different position we are. They're not growing the way we are. And, relative to what you're saying, I would be very surprised, while I appreciate the sensitivity, if we will be able to avoid relocatables or portables. I mean, nobody really wants to strategize for it, but just the way that we grow.
No, I get it.
It's not because we're not doing things right, we don't want to do things right, but we can't, we don't approve, and you know this as well as anybody, we don't approve one new housing project anywhere. And if somebody builds something somewhere, and Ricky, you and I were in a conversation yesterday, there's no concurrency. So if somebody builds a development, they're going to bring their son or daughter up to that school, and they're going to expect a teacher with a student station, and if we've got to put a relocatable or a portable, or whatever you want to call it there, while may not be preferred, let's not be naive and think that it ain't going to end up there.
No, I get it.
One of the other challenges that we have is that even though we've done some space reconfigurations at schools like Horizon and Narcousie to bring them up in terms of student stations, that doesn't help the infrastructure piece, the size of the cafeteria, the size of the media center, the size of the gym.
Right.
And then this at least gets us above that 1,200 student station piece for those spaces, which will allow for more flexibility of use.
So I think the last comment I would make is, as we go through this exercise on this and then the future elementary site prototypes as well, personally, I'd want to make sure that the board is engaged in the conversation of what those numbers should look like. I think that's probably the big is, I think to your question earlier, when do we talk about this? I want to make sure.
Well, we
that
did approve the bigger
We
numbers.
approved the bigger
No,
numbers.
I'm not saying that. I'm
Yeah.
just saying in general, that as we go through these processes, we need to know and we need to be comfortable with where we're going with it as well. And a lot of times what we need is exactly what we just experienced, is insight from subject matter experts in different areas of the district to help us understand the rationale and the presentation and why you're wanting to do what you want to do. So.
Absolutely, understood.
Superintendent, I think Rhonda wanted to add something too.
Wanda might as well come up too, because we're talking funding next, so.
We're kind
That way you're on the
of,
mic.
we're kind of fond of Rhonda.
Just real quick, keep in mind, to build a new school, we already have to have pretty
Half
much
the
the
kids.
students here.
Half the kids anyway.
So
So they
when
gotta
I
be
worked with
informed.
Mr. Allen to increase the middle school, they felt the perfect size is 1,400. So you're always going to have 100, 150 kids or so in portables. So if you build to 1,600, you end up with 1,800 because the kids already have to be in the portables
Yep.
before you can open the school. So.
Mr. Weishauer, if I can add to, as being a long-term middle school principal, 1,400 is a manageable number. When you get beyond that, it's, it takes some more operation and more staff to run it efficiently and effectively.
I'm good. I just wanted to have the conversation.
That's why we have a workshop. It's good.
Okay, very good. With that, we'll move to the next item, Celebration Island Village. Our Director of Planning, Rhonda Blake, will take us through that.
Thank you. When we first started this presentation, we had done our annual review and we'd gone out to anybody that we're mitigating with or we have contracts with, and we're making sure that their developments are still coming in online. And when I first heard from TCC, they had requested that we push their development out 6 months. So in their current agreement that we just finalized with them in June, if we pushed them out 6 months, that would have gave us a mid-year opening. So I went back to them and said, historically, we're not in favor of a mid-year opening. And we asked them, so are you still sticking with that? So Todd and Paige got back with me since then, and they indicated when they were talking to me on the phone, they didn't have the contract in front of them, and they thought their agreement was to have all of our money to us in 2017. They didn't realize that it's in 2018. So right now, they are claiming or stating that they can still meet their 2018 agreement with us, which would give us an opening date of August 2019. And some of the things that they would need to deliver to us by January 2018 is a site ready to build. That was one of the things they agreed to give us. So when we go onto the site, we just start building the school. So that would include, I'm not going to read all of it to you, but all the site preparation, including all the fill excavation and other improvements. They have to stub out all utilities to the property line without limitation to electric, water, utilities. We just have to pay for the connection of the utilities. All the streets and lighting up to the school property, and all off-site stormwater retention. And the developer funding obligation, no later than January 1, at the closing date, they were going to give us $3,500,000. That was so we could start our designing process. And then the balance that they were going to contribute is that $8,579,266 within 7 days of us selecting our construction manager. No earlier than April 1, 2018, but no later than June 30, 2018. So that was going to give us the 12 months to build the school and open it for August of 19. We, of course, agreed that we would be able to come up with our portion of the funding to provide the school. So we had some delays, and what we were looking at originally was we saw this as an opportunity to move up the middle school, because right now middle school for Harmony was slated to open in August of 2020. So when we started our conversations, we thought we'd push Celebration out to August 2020, and we could move the middle school up to August of 19. So that was the original intent.
They don't have, let's back up. Celebration doesn't have a buyer for their project to do that.
I know they're in negotiations, but they have not
They've
solidified
been in
that deal.
negotiations for 5 years. Okay, because, and board, just so you know, I mean, if, without someone as a buyer, we don't need the school, because it's a question of accommodating the rooftops. And in addition to that, part of the issue with Celebration is even when they've got the buyer then has to commit to building a bridge. Thus, it is Island Village, and they had to wait for the property values to come back because the bridge is horrifically expensive. So it's good that they're being flexible, but until they got a firm buyer, this is a wishful schedule, I think. But hopefully they'll meet it, but until they do, let's move forward on, to your point, let's move forward on Harmony and all the other projects, because that's not needed until they got rooftops.
Well, currently in the capital improvement plan, Harmony is slated to open August of 2020. So this was going to give you the option to move it up to August 2019. If you still wanted to move the middle school up to 19, we would either have to agree to go to TCC and just tell them we've made a decision to open them in August 2020, or I would have to revert to Sarah, and I don't know if she's ready to discuss it tonight, to see if Celebration did come through, would we have the capabilities to open both schools in August 2019? And I don't know if Sarah would have the funding available or operations-wise,
Yeah,
if
you
we
don't
could
know, we
open
wouldn't.
2 schools in the same year and what that would do to us. So that's kind of what that option would provide us.
Mrs. Graber's going to join us.
Yeah, I have looked at the funding, assuming that our impact fees revenues come in as we've budgeted, and that the cost of building the school don't skyrocket, which are both potential. We could go ahead and slate it for funding a year sooner. It would just be cutting ourselves a little bit closer than we normally like to, and we would also have to shift some other things around. We're currently funding some of our debt out of impact fees. We would have to shift that back, use up some property tax dollars instead. But if that's something that this board chooses to do, to go ahead and move forward with Harmony a year earlier, I think we could make it work from a funding
I guess
perspective.
the question I would have, going back, and I appreciate that, and I think moving forward on Harmony, because Harmony, we're not waiting for a bridge. I guess what I would ask the Celebration Company, because, they'll give you answers in shades of gray, and we need to ask them, where's the letter of intent from your developer on the land purchase? Do you have one? Do you have a memorandum of understanding? Who's it with? Can we meet with them? Or is it one of these, double-blind secret meetings that Celebration likes to do, and they're not going to tell anybody anything, and they're basically jerking everybody around?
I wouldn't want to get into the legalities. I just know right now we have an agreement we just finalized in June, and this is what they committed to. And there is a statement in there that says if they can't meet January 1, 2018, at that point, we could null and void all references to the new school, but the rest of that agreement talks about so much more than just the new school.
Right.
So it says everything else in the agreement would hold, and we could eliminate all conversations to the new school, or in January of 18, if we still see a need for the school, we could agree to extend that portion of the contract out. But I don't know that legally we should, we can start asking.
So we got to grab the money by a date certain.
I mean, they've made a commitment. I see it as we have to see if they
Sarah,
meet their commitment.
I'd like to see us go with Harmony, but can you come in the next couple meetings and give us what some of those trade-offs are, so we can make a informed?
And let's
I know the request had already been put out there previously to look at the potential of moving it up, so we had shifted some things around.
And let's ask Celebration, if we got to take money from Celebration by a date certain, let's take the money. If they haven't built the bridge and haven't built a road that we can't go and build a school on, what happens in that? What happens if that's the circumstance where, okay, we did what we said, they said they're going to give us the money, but there's no road we can get to the piece of property on, and the piece of property won't be ready because they haven't got a deal.
It all has to come together. So they can't give me a site ready to build on if they don't have a bridge. So if they don't have the buyer in place, then they're not going to come forward with the payment, which then means we can null and void the contract or offer an extension at that point. So, one's kicked to the next, yeah,
You
so.
could do some renegotiating.
It's not just the access to the site, facilities as well. I need fire protection to start tilting panels. I need water to, start up chillers in March,
Right.
April, so
There's
that we
nothing
can
there.
have
It's
a
a swamp
conditioned
right now.
building environment to do finishes.
Right, I get it. You need infrastructure.
Right.
That doesn't exist.
I think we would know more in 6 months from Celebration, which could still put them, but as you'll see from the timelines, one of the reasons we were here tonight is if you want to move middle school AA to an August 19 opening, we need to be in design right now. And then we go.
That was kind of where I
So
was
the
at. I
timeline-
see you have November 16 on there.
I mean, like,
I know
right
Clarence
now.
was asking for the next couple meetings. I'm actually,
Well, I think we need to be moving in that direction.
yeah,
We would have
I'm
to-
actually in favor of this plan, obviously. But, I don't want to put us in some sort of precarious financial situation. So
Let's let Mark kind of walk through the two timelines of what it would be if we were to use our existing middle school prototype on the Harmony side, or if we were to hold and try to use the new middle school prototype, which is
somebody had
kind
already-
of what.
I see what that is.
About
and,
not delayed.
If you, I mean, I can put in my 2 cents before Mr. Clinch even starts, but I mean.
Give him 3 minutes.
I'll give him the
Okay,
time.
3 minutes.
Moving the project up to 19, to opening in June of 19, assumes that we would have 18 months for construction, that we would have 6 months minimum for design. The big question mark here is the Army Corps permitting.
Yep.
And with our current high school project, and from speaking to our neighbors, Osceola County government, they're currently extending A.J. Gallagher Boulevard, which will provide the curb cuts for the Harmony Middle School, and constructing a sheriff's training facility out there. They are encountering these types of challenges now. So the challenge then becomes having a completed design to start that 8-month Army Corps of Engineering permitting time clock.
We
So
also had a significant delay out there on the sheriff's training facility because of gopher tortoises, which we were fortunate not to find on our FFF site, at least not in phase 1, but that can be a significant cost and delay.
Let me back up, Mark, your 8-month schedule for the
That's what
Army
we gave
Corps
him the
starts
site.
when? Tell me, when does that 8-month schedule with the Army Corps begin?
Well, I did backwards planning.
Right.
From June of 19. So the 18 months for construction brought me to a construction NTP date of January of 18. Army Corps permitting backed up 8 months from there, May of 17. So the design would have to start this month.
So we're, okay, so if we've got a design we can use.
Correct.
I mean, so if we use the design that we have, you're telling me we can get this done, is that, or am I incorrect?
Yes. Yes.
Well, then there's no gray area for me.
Otherwise, if we wait to vet through the middle school prototype selection process, there's no way that
We know
we.
the situation is at Harmony Community School. We know what the situation is at Narcousie Middle School. We know what the situation is in continuing to grow at St. Cloud Middle School. My daughter goes to school there. So we know that this middle school is going to relieve all that. And the growth is continuing. I mean, I was out at Harmony Community School just a couple weeks ago, and they were already telling me they're pretty much filled up again with the portables.
Oh, right.
Correct.
And so we've got to do something in this area.
I say, put your foot on
There's
the gas and
500
don't-
homes. Deborah and I pass it every day. Oh, no, I don't pass it every day. She does. There's 500 homes going up, 300 at Whaley's Creek, I think they call it, at Deer Run and Canoe Creek. I mean,
Yes.
where are we sending these kids?
Right.
We've got homes kicking up every day in the Narcousie corridor.
Ricky, I'm on board.
I know. I'm just saying.
No, I know what the growth is.
I'm
And so,
on board too. I don't know about these two out there.
I say, put your foot on the gas pedal and make it happen. If you gotta do it now, you got the
There's
tools in
5 of us.
place.
What I've heard
Let's
is
hear
that-
what the
But
other-
then that's kind of what I was getting to.
Let's hear
But
what the
that's
other
my
two
side
are.
of town, and it's.
You live out there? I wasn't sure. Okay.
And I certainly want to make sure that we respect everybody's viewpoint.
Yeah, I mean, you got a prototype you can use, you're saying you can start that clock now, you can meet the schedule.
Right.
Meet the schedule. And I got my
Okay.
CFO saying you can do
Tim or
it.
Kelvin, y'all got anything you want to chime in on this one?
What do we lose by using the existing prototype? I mean, we just had a conversation about the importance of getting a new one, and now we're rushing into using one that we have that we think we may not want to use.
Well, this is a design that we've already procured for the middle school DD site, the Pleasant Hill site.
Right.
So I believe that we could talk to that design professional
Yep,
and
I believe we could,
and
too.
really, get a great
And this
value for
design
that design. Because
has been
again, it's
built.
already been designed. Now we have to
Yeah.
tweak it, a few
No.
minor tweaks to bring it up to the current code standards and that type of thing. Site adaptation.
Well, and with no offense to you guys, obviously, I'm just having an objective conversation.
No, that's
But
great.
if we're saying that we want to, and I get your point, and it's a very valid point. We could make it work. We used the Liberty prototype and others and did modifications, what we're doing on the new high school site. But if we just spent 15 minutes talking about why it's so important that we get a new middle school prototype or prototypes, and then 35 seconds after that, we immediately go into a conversation of, well, let's use our existing prototype. From my perspective, just saying I need to understand all of these pieces and parts. I don't necessarily have a problem. I mean, there's capacity issues on the east side of town. They're going to continue to happen. There's certainly an overall desire from the board to go in that direction, but I just think that it's important that we all understand all the pieces and parts with this, and that we don't rush into it, and then 5 months from now, 6 months from now, sit our new middle school prototype and go, man, we really wish we should have, could have used that one on this site, and then have the Harmony community saying, well, man, we would have loved to have gotten this new design here. Why'd you guys rush into this decision just to get us something instead of getting us what you wanted?
Well, and
And none of that's to say the design is bad or that we can't use it.
But I thought the conversation.
That's the honest conversation.
Yeah, I thought the conversation earlier was that there was nothing wrong with the prototype that we had. We were just looking for some additional options for different site
and
sizes.
then Tim, that's.
And I don't disagree.
So that's okay.
My only point, though, is where we build the Harmony Middle School using the existing prototype, we immediately then, let's say, have a new prototype, and then we have a portion of our community saying, well, we wanted the new prototype. If we would have just waited X number of months, we could have got it. And again, I'm not saying
I'm
that's...
not sure you ever get away from that.
Yeah, well, maybe not, but
I hear you.
For me, I just want to have that honest conversation, and if the end result is exactly what you guys said, I don't have any heartburn over it at all. I just want to make sure that we have the conversation.
I think our goal when we started with our strategic planning process back in March, and worked through that and developed our strategy profiles in terms of looking for ways that we could maximize our efficiencies and our effectiveness, was to give us some choices, some options, as opposed to only having a single elementary, a single middle school, a single high school prototype. We leveraged some of those choices as we were doing redesign, for example, for OHS and St. Cloud High School, because those were unique situations and the prototype didn't fit. And so we were able to do some things that were different and creative and outside the box. And when you do that, you can always have some choice and potentially some additional efficiency. At that time, we thought that the Harmony Middle School was looking at a 2021 opening. We've now experienced growth. Our impact fee collection continues to come in a little bit ahead of where we thought we were going to be, which gives us a little bit more flexibility, and we still have a little bit of uncertainty about where we're going with the Celebration Island School. This allows us to kind of leverage some of that. We do have to be in a position to honor our commitment to Celebration Island at this stage of the game.
Yeah.
What they're saying to us now is that they are on track.
Right.
Do we still have some hesitancy? Yes. If there's no real confirmed buyer and we've got a bridge to build, that obviously, has some challenges and some
absolutely.
complications ahead of it. So when we were going out for the RFP or planning to go out for the RFP for the new prototype, we were still looking at a 2021 middle school opening for Harmony, and that made absolute sense. Now we have the potential to move it up. That means that we work with our current design partner and use the existing prototype. And that really is the pleasure of this board.
And
We
Tim-
will work either way.
And Tim, to your point, you made a good point, and I understand the value in having another prototype. It's always good to have vanilla and chocolate, even strawberry to pick from. But we're talking about a schedule now. It's about meeting a schedule, accommodating growth, taking care of the community out there, and if a new prototype doesn't meet this, then we got to use what will meet the schedule. And to your point, someone's going to complain, well, you got a new prototype, why didn't you use it? No matter what you do, someone's going to complain. And, you're going to make the best decisions with the resources that you have, with the time you got available, and I think that's what we're doing.
So the prototype that we have now has been built at West Side? No. Yes? No?
It started as a middle school.
Well, I know it's in terms of a
K.
but that is what we would kind of be building at Harmony. We know there's some tweaks.
Well, it's not exact because of the footprint of the land. For instance, at West Side, you got an amphitheater because there's some elevations they took advantage of. You probably wouldn't have those elevations on the east side.
Flatwoods and
right. So,
Flatwoods and Holy Paul.
So a lot of it will be the same, but to say it will be identical it's a question of the footprint of land will keep it from being exactly identical.
So we haven't not built this thing. We know kind of what it is. So we have some experience with this.
We built elements, the kit of parts. It will be prototypical. It won't be exact. It won't look exactly.
And we're going to go through this same
West Side.
process we did with the high school and say, hey, we'd like this or we'd like
But
this.
expedited in order to keep
But
us on
absolutely.
track with our Army Corps of Engineer permitting.
Yep.
Right.
We'll have to move pretty quickly.
And we could move this date from May, right, or if we had to.
Let me go back to a question.
Remember, that's where we don't have any control.
No, I understand.
The Army Corps of Engineer controls that.
I've
Once
got
we
an inkling
submit,
that
they're
may
telling us
change.
an 8-month lead.
Once we get sworn in,
that might
Congressman in
change.
January, we may have a little more control, but right now, once we have our new congressman in January, that may help, but he's not sworn in yet.
What is the existing prototype student station-wise? We just had a conversation about
1408.
That's what the existing one?
Yes.
That's our
I
new
thought
one.
that, oh, that's the new, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
Fund
My
95s are
bad.
existing, we're moving it to 1408.
14,
So it's in the
20?
same range.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's right in the same range.
So it's no deviation from
And
that.
has that prototype been used anywhere else but West Side?
As Mark said, components of it have been.
Components
The
of-
community school, it has components of it, some of the other.
And we obviously want to match what we have at the Harmony Community School and the Harmony High School and the middle school all kind of need to flow, so to speak,
The middle
design-wise.
school- The middle school prototype design in Osceola County is actually an evolution of the prototype elementary school that you've used at Narcousie, East Lake. The core building for the middle school is pretty much the same building as your elementaries. There's some minor tweaks inside because now you're putting science labs in and those kinds of things, but pretty much the concept was back however many years ago this is now. You could physically, if you wanted to, like let's use Celebration as an example, as a very tight site, gonna be a hard sell to get the elementary school on there. Let's say that West Side was built as an elementary instead of the K-8 it is, you could convert West Side into a middle school knowing that you were building an elementary school at Celebration. So that's kind of the idea. It's just an evolution of all your elementaries that are of that prototype.
Answer me this
Like
question. This
Sunrise,
is a
Koa, Chestnut, are those all,
Yeah.
right?
Right, well, not Chestnut and Koa, yes, Chestnut,
Okay,
no.
Chestnut.
The question I have is, if we are to expedite this, so to speak, what potentially do we lose? What are we going to say? Man, if we'd have waited a year, that new middle school do we not know, or do we kind of have an idea of the direction we're heading? Like, what would we potentially miss out on here?
From my standpoint, the benefit of having multiple prototypes is more with the site configuration. Given the site
So
at
the
Harmony,
learning, the labs, the auditorium, the
Harmony is-
fields,
is
all
a-
that is going to be there, and it's going to be in the new
It-
design.
Right, it will have
Okay.
all that.
And I
And
feel
most
fairly
anything, most any
If I could
prototype
give you like
would
a-
fit
just
on
as-
that site.
Just a quick curriculum example. At West Side, there were vocational labs. When we did the design for the Pleasant Hill, we designed a STEAM lab, which isn't in West Side. I know we've been doing, STEAM at the high school, so I mean, we already have that in the
With
Pleasant Hill
respect to
model.
the program needs and the
Right.
curriculum that you
Yeah.
all want,
Right.
the middle school prototype you have has the same kind of flexibility that the high school does.
That's what I was
And
gonna
if
say.
you decide that the Harmony School needs to have a few different programs in it than West Side or than any of the others, those can easily be
Okay.
implemented into that design
that's
with a
all
minimum
I'm-
of change.
And you have the ability to go back, and I think you've done this a few times, go back to West Side and kind of kick the tires on it, what works, what doesn't work. I realize it's K-8, and it's not quite apples to apples, but it's built and it's there, and you can talk
Sure.
to teachers, talk to principal, hey, if you had something in here that you don't have now, what's missing? You have that ability because it's right here. The other part of it is, it's got all your systems and all your standards already built in. That's why we can sort of move quickly.
Kelvin?
What about, no, he said he's good.
No, you hit the nail on the head. You really want to think, board, you just really want to think, what do you gain for giving up this 1 year? Really, if it's going to be, if you look back and say, just like Mr. Booth said, what did we give up to be opening 1 year earlier, and you're at peace with it, then go for it.
And I do know and trust that our design partners would work with us, just like they have in the
Sure.
high school prototype, to give us the school
Just
that we want.
maybe in like 2 meetings, not 5.
They probably much prefer that.
They're probably going,
No, we'll call it a day. I think the last
Dave's
piece,
getting
at
excited.
least for me,
Go ahead.
is the financial component of that, and really
Yeah.
understanding those moving parts of what this timeline means, how that affects us in other areas. I'd want to understand that. I mean,
Yep.
as I sit here today, I can, agree with everyone. This sounds like something that we can and maybe should do. I want to understand the financial aspect of it, though, before I say, yes, I'm on board.
It makes a lot more sense now. When I had looked at it previously, before we knew whether the sales tax was going to pass or not, that's when it was very concerning to move our debt back out of impact fees into property taxes, which is what we would have had to do. Now, keep in mind that we are going to be doing a lot of our maintenance and renovation projects with the new sales tax dollars. which could potentially free up some of the property tax to take on that debt.
We have
So
refinanced
that's
some of that debt
how
as
we would
well.
So,
switch that
to
around.
Tim's point, I'm with, sorry, go ahead. I was gonna say, to Tim's point, I'm with him, I wanna understand the financials, but I'm still looking at November of 16 here on it. And so, and I know that our next board meeting is not until December, help me out.
Something, 8th, 9th, 10th.
Well, it sounds like you're fairly comfortable,
Yes.
Sarah.
I mean,
I think we all want to see it
I just
reported
don't have
what
it
it
in
is.
front of me, but
What kind of
it's
risk do we have to start spending,
That's
to get, start
exactly where I
down the
was going.
path
Yeah.
with you coming back in December and showing it to us, and three of us go, whoa.
Yeah.
And it will come to you in the form of capital budget amendments.
Right, and my plan was to bring a capital budget amendment to the December meeting anyway, showing the new sales tax revenues coming in and the appropriations that we want to start
So,
working in.
can we get the piece that we need done in November 16 with, how much risk is involved there of us coming back? I know that's where Clarence was headed, that's where I'm headed. How much risk is saying, hey, staff, go, but on the 13th, there is a slight possibility that we look at the financials and go, no.
No, we can definitely fund it. There will be a slight trade-off, but it's not one that I would say is of concern.
I got one question for
So-
Dr. Pace. Tell me what you think is the best thing for the community and the kids out there, opening in 19 or opening in 20? I know it's best for the students.
You know, I have a little bit of misgiving in terms of operationally looking at opening two schools in 1 year.
Okay.
You know, I mean,
You can
that's, I
handle it.
have to kind of
I
work
know,
through
you
that
can-
piece.
but I got confidence
But
in you.
obviously, from a capital standpoint, if we can do it, it's great, because otherwise, we're looking at adding more portables at all three of those sites.
So it's in the best interest of kids to open sooner rather than later.
Absolutely.
Let's do it then. That answers my question.
So what are we going to do? Let me go back to Mr. Booth's comment. Can we give a head nod tonight from the board that we're wanting to move forward so that you guys can start to work with Schinkel now and begin to work through that? And then how quickly are we going to get your reporting leading into this December meeting so that we can all really work through that and make sure that we're comfortable? And with all due respect, I know you're comfortable and that's important to me, but I need the five of us to be comfortable.
We'll prepare the budget amendment for the December 13th meeting, and I can get it out sooner, get a draft out
Yeah,
sooner.
if you can even get it out before, don't wait for the agenda if you have
And
the.
what I will ask Sarah to do is to at least call or try to schedule an individual meeting with
Yep,
each of
sure.
you to kind of walk through that process, even in advance of that meeting.
Yeah.
And what I'm
So,
guessing that we
you
could
got 4
probably
days
get
extra next
commitment
week.
from our design partners is that if we need to do it in 5 months instead of 6 months, we'd be busy, busy, busy working together.
And that's what I would advocate, that we get a design completed by May 17th, even if we have to accelerate that design. And we already have a design, we already have something to start from.
You're not starting with a blank page, so you've got a huge leg up on making that happen.
Right, so that we could definitely start the Army Corps permitting by May 17th, allow that 18 months. Maybe it comes in less, but allow the worst-case scenario. But from a risk management standpoint, I think, you know, we had to break apart the high school project into 3 bid packages because of permitting. And that does increase risk. Now, we have a good plan how we get to the end of that project, but there are still some unknowns. And I would rather that we have the permitting completed up front before we go into construction, and we go into construction with 1 bid package.
So you guys are hearing everything that we're saying and what our concerns are. Do you have any concerns at all with what we're talking about and us being able to meet this June 19 opening, getting everything done, dealing with the Army Corps, and having your design ready to go for what you think our need will be?
And I know Gilbane may not be the CM on that, but that's enough time.
18 months is a good schedule. It's plenty enough time.
That's plenty enough time.
So I think you got consensus on where to go.
And the risk, so what I'm hearing then is, the question that I asked was, the risk was low, that you're going to present something to us in December that would make us say, oh my gosh, no.
Absolutely, we wouldn't be here talking about it to us.
And I want to know, just, I don't know if everyone feels this, when I talk with you, meet with you, I want to know all the moving parts. What are we giving up? What do we have to sacrifice? Where are we taking money to deal with this? And then what gets pushed back? I don't want to just look at, can we afford this? I want to look at the big picture and what I'm giving up in other areas to make sure we can make this happen.
Right,
Just so you know
and
what-
my plan is basically to redo the 5-year capital plan and have it in that format.
And just so we're on this conversation, because I think we're kind of finished with most of this, I've got some other comments on the sales tax
Me too.
changes. that I'm gonna add to your plate. If we got our financial advisor looking at this yet, and what we can do, what is into the board to determine if we want to bond some sooner than later while our prices are down, rates are good. Board's call. Just another comment for discussion with the board is I know we've been, for the last several years, we've been spending a lot of money on Band-Aiding projects. We get a chiller that's down, we spend $30,000 to fix it, and we still got a chiller that's 25 years old that doesn't work. My preference is the quicker we stop that, sooner we stop that and start doing what needs to be done, the better off we are.
I think if I could just kind of give you an update on what we've talked about, and then
Okay.
you can decide if we're going in the right direction or if you want to give us a different direction.
Okay.
But the team really started getting together and planning last Wednesday morning, but we had a solid meeting early Monday to talk about what we think we can go ahead and start to leverage and do with the cash flow that we have, knowing that the sales tax dollars will start being generated in January and start flowing toward us in April. What can we do so that we can honor our commitment to our community since they've put their trust in us? So we've already identified 8 carpet paint type projects for about $1 million, a little less, that our maintenance team would begin working on potentially over winter break.
Good.
We have 3 chiller projects that we think that we could potentially get started over spring break.
Where?
And our energy manager starts on December 5th. Her first task will be to look at the ESCO analysis so that by January, we have some real firm direction about whether or not that's the direction we want to go so that we can get out of the Band-Aid business with the chillers, look at LED lighting to start generating some operational efficiencies with our electricity management through that ESCO model with our 2 companies that we've already been in discussions with, but really wanted to make sure we have an expert on to analyze.
Excuse me.
Mark is also,
Let her go through it, Jay.
Okay.
The 3 projects are Kissimmee Middle, Horizon, and I don't recall the third, but they're priority 1.
We're getting
projects.
tight on time. so-
I know, I understand.
The other piece is that we're hoping to be able, from a facility standpoint, to start almost immediately on a whole site plan for that Michigan Avenue St. Cloud Middle School property, to look at what we could do to leverage that entire piece of property best so that we could get both of those schools on track for a renovation project, doing Denjon on the other side at the same time. So this first year, we would start planning immediately to see what we could do to get those 3 schools moving. It will probably happen in phases. For example, at Michigan Avenue, you may potentially rebuild a new elementary school at the front, use the 2 existing buildings that we know we already have to save at Michigan Avenue as a part of the middle school piece. Mark is ordering Gestaldi projects on St. Cloud Middle and Denjon. We don't have those yet, but then that would be kind of our year 1, 3 projects, plan, design, start building.
When's the RFP for the master
Following
plan?
that, we would be coming up with year 2, looking at Gateway, starting the planning process and moving that forward, and then looking at 2 projects a year out of our sales tax revenues, which is where the bonding piece would really start to have to come in. And Mark can kind of fill in more details, but that's kind of what we're looking at from a long-range plan of how we can get started right away on the projects that we are committed to. But it does require projects, and I don't want to rush the Michigan Avenue piece and miss out on some opportunities by getting that master site plan and looking at St. Cloud Middle School and Michigan Avenue as one piece, where you could potentially even do some shared spaces, maybe a shared kitchen with 2 separate, eating facilities,
Absolutely.
shared gym space. So like I said, if we rush that, we miss out on some of those
Yep.
efficiencies. So we want to show progress right away, but we want to do it strategically.
Can we get Dana's group to pull together an initial one, but then something that we do quarterly that could go to the papers from you and the chair? And and I'd like us to do one hopefully maybe even in December. You'd laid out $1 million for paint and you laid out some chiller things, you got a few things on your plate. This is where your tax dollars at work thing or whatever it is, because we don't have, we've kind of resisted, which I'm still fine with, driving this as a board, which I think is a good thing, as opposed to getting, 300 committees to figuring stuff out. But I think I want to show the community constantly, this is what we said we're going to do, this is what we're doing. And the sooner and the faster we start doing that, I think the better off we are.
Yeah, like I said, we've just, I mean, obviously today's Tuesday. It's been a
Yeah.
week.
Yeah.
So we've already started to really have some fast discussions. Mark's going to be our point person for these projects, but we know that communicating with Dana, working closely with Sarah, and with Mark Cavaney, and with Robert Curran and Randy and Clyde is going to be crucial to help us move this forward.
I got a couple of things. Number one, go back to the ESCOs.
Mhm.
So we can expect a contract for the ESCOs for the board to approve, say, by February?
If we decide that's the direction that
Or
we
you-
think
or
is
you gotta
best
buy
to
them
go.
out, or you gotta
Yep,
buy them
January or
out.
February, we'll
Okay.
have something for you.
Okay, that's good. Number, and I still think, I'm gonna chime in, I still think that they've operated in good faith, they've waited a long
They
time.
have.
But that's not a good enough reason for us to do business with them,
Correct.
I understand that. Meanwhile, I do think that even with the sales tax revenue, we're always gonna be behind the eight ball on deferred maintenance, and this gives us some guarantees, it gives us a couple of good partners with some industry expertise we may not have. And I think it's worth doing, maybe not a $20 million project, but $2, $3, $4 million projects, see how they perform. And make sure there's no prepayment penalty if we want to buy the project out. I mean, so let them do their guarantee for a couple of years. If it's meeting it, then it's meeting it, number one. Number two, relative to Denjon, St. Cloud Middle School, and Michigan Avenue Elementary. I know you're going to go through the Castaldi process because we have to, I understand. But the question, but can you concurrently go through, do an RFP for a master plan of both sites? So you've got a master plan that's being, that we've select somebody, just like we did at OHS, et cetera, at St. Cloud High School. So we've got somebody who master plans and also can do the facility. Same thing with Denjon, so that way we are moving where we need to go. When would those RFPs come out?
We're working with procurement on those now.
So
And
we're
we're
out by
also working
January?
on getting our due diligence POs for environmental, geotech, surveying, topo boundary, utility surveys. The Castaldis, as the superintendent mentioned, is completed for Michigan Ave.
Right, I know that.
It's still valid. So we're now moving forward with the Castaldis for St. Cloud and Denjon. Now, keep in mind that Denjon was number 2 on the list. So, and St. Cloud Middle was number 3. So the phased approach would entail likely doing Michigan Ave first and retaining those 2 existing wings, maybe incorporating those into the middle school,
makes sense.
wrapping the middle school around towards the elementary school so we can get those shared facilities. With the middle school, we have to retain the existing gym and the 2-story classroom building. So but we do this in a phased approach so that the next heartbeat of construction goes to Denjon. We get that project started, and right behind that, we get the construction started at Michigan Ave, and St. Cloud Middle is likely a 2-phase
Does
project.
Denjon need to have a master plan also?
It needs a master plan.
Okay.
It likely needs a master plan, but definitely a Castaldi.
Okay.
We are assuming
Okay.
that Building 1 can be demolished and
I
replaced
got a
at this
question on
time.
Castaldi. Can we concurrently, at least with Denjon, did we already select somebody to do the Castaldi on Denjon?
We are in the process of soliciting proposals.
So the question I've got is can we do an amendment to that solicitation so it's a proposal for a Castaldi and if need be, a master plan, so we don't have 2 RFPs? Okay, the same thing goes, we've got the Castaldi for Michigan Avenue Elementary, so we can move on that whole site. Someone's got to do a Castaldi on St. Cloud Middle. Can we do that Castaldi and the RFP for the master plan at the same time also? So that way, we're working, the roadmap isn't in chunks. We've got somebody who can take us from soup to nuts on both.
Yes.
Great.
Yes, we will look at that to bring in as many efficiencies as possible. Ultimately, we want to get 2 projects in the pipeline
I understand.
at any given time. 2 in planning,
So
2
let me
design,
back-
2 in
so
construction.
selection from those RFPs will come to the board for approval December or January?
We're looking at about a 4-month period for the planning of these first 3 schools. So I hope that in 4 months, we can get the first 3 in design.
Okay, but to get them in design, when will we get the approval firms?
The
January?
Castaldis are relatively quick. We will encourage the firms to work very closely with DOE to, come down, do their assessments, so that we can get a solid read on the Castaldi. We need a solid read
I understand.
before we can move forward in design.
Well, you can tell them how you want the Castaldi to come out, too.
And that's a good point, Jay. You have to be very careful, with the sales tax dollars that we're being allocated now, how we spend those dollars for projects going forward, because where we spend dollars in a location where we would otherwise want to do a replacement, that can work against us in the custody. So we have to be very strategic how we spend the sales tax dollars going forward.
I appreciate the point, but it won't work against us.
I know, Clarence, you had some additional points that you wanted to make. I just wanted to kind of cover those things that I thought were on your minds, but if I've not hit those, or if there's something else, let us know.
And Clarence, I can respond to your questions about the bonding as well. I wanted to let Dr. Pace kind of give the overview of what we've talked about in our approach first, but from a bonding perspective, our financial advisors are definitely looking at that. I've given them kind of some rough numbers on what the projects we're planning on doing and when the cash would be needed for various dollar amounts. So they're going to crunch some numbers and see. We definitely don't want to bond too soon because based on the planning time frame for Michigan Avenue.
Well, let me say something about that. That's where I want our financial advisor on that. I don't want to bond a year later at 2% higher interest.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. However, that's the analysis
Right.
that needs to happen.
So,
I just have a couple quick comments on the whole conversation we just had. I am all for speed and getting things done and making sure that we're being proactive. But more than that, I'm about excellence. And so to your point about how do we do this and how do we work through this process, I think as I expressed with the conversation on Harmony is I have no problem moving forward, but I don't want to move forward with something only to find ourselves sitting here in whatever time period it is and saying we should have, we could have, and we didn't. So just so you hear from my perspective, and I don't know if I'm alone or together on this, but yes, we need to be proactive. Yes, we need to be looking at what we need to do. Yes, we want to leverage the investment that's been given to the district. But I care nothing about anything more than making sure that we do all of this right and that we make good, smart decisions for the long term for this community. So I don't want to rush into any project. The second point I would make is equity, is making sure that when we're looking at what projects we're taking on, what renovations we're doing, what new schools we're building, where in the district we're building them, that we're thinking about equity across the entire district and we're having a holistic approach to how we're dealing with all of these sites and schools and campuses and renovations. The last piece I would say really falls with a lot of what you do, Rhonda, in particular is a lot of our conversation tonight has centered around the central east side of town, which is fine. There's a lot of growth happening out there. We also have the west side of town, though, as well. Fortunately, as we sit right now, aside from Bella Lago, there's not a lot of construction happening on the south of Poinciana sector as much. But I want to make sure that we're thinking about that west side as well as the infill areas with downtown Kissimmee, with the Loop, with all the new developments on Neptune Road. So this goes back to the point about the financial piece for me, though, as well, is I want to understand all of it. I want to make sure that as I'm making these decisions, I'm not making them with a very narrow scope, but I really am looking broad and wide at this district, and that the five of us are looking at the next 15 or 20 years of Osceola County schools and making decisions today that are going to affect that. Just so you hear my heart on this, I have no interest in rushing into something so we say we got it done and then looking back in 5 or 10 years and saying, no.
Point, understood.
So when will we have our first design workshop on the middle school then?
How many designs done?
February?
February will be the first design workshop. And we're gonna have that done by May. If we start with a design workshop in February, we'll have another one maybe in March and then another in April.
We'll do a monthly update on that school. It's important
And may
enough
have to do it a little bit more often monthly the first year.
Sure.
We did a monthly.
Yeah, and to Tim's point, we're just, East Side's catching up, you know? Kissimmee's always been big brother. St. Cloud's always been little brother. St. Cloud's getting there. No, I'm just
Yeah, no, it's good.
You're
I'm
a big
excited
dog
about
now,
it.
Ricky.
Yeah, no. And actually, I agree with Tim fully that
We are looking at it.
that we want to make sure that we're doing things. We have equity in mind, but we certainly know that Michigan Avenue is the oldest school.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
there's wainscoting. That's all we have to say.
nobody talked about any school budget.
And just one other comment, I fully agree with what Clarence said, we need
Yeah.
to be very thoughtful about
Yep.
getting word out on a regular basis about what we're doing and honoring the investment that's being made. So I agree with you 100%.
Baseball facility.
Based on that, board, we'll stand adjourned for the next 15 minutes and have
Well,
swearings, I
We have
guess.
swearing ins.
Who are you swearing at?
I'm swearing at Kelvin only.
I don't swear.
That's why I just called it swearings. I don't know what.